Croydon Airport, July 4, 1928. A fabulously wealthy businessman, Alfred Loewenstein, arrived at the airport. He was about to enter the plane, not knowing it would be his last time touching the ground. It was a routine flight he made on regular basis that would take him across the English and French coastlines before landing at Brussels, where he lived with his wife, Madeleine. Despite rain and night time, the flight seemed to go smoothly and nothing was out of ordinary. Until, at some point over the English Channel, Loewenstein got up to his feet and went to a tiny bathroom compartment at the back of the cabin, not suspecting a thing. Alfred Loewenstein never made it out of the cabin, and that was the last time anyone had seen him alive. Naturally, one of the employees, Fred Baxter, went to check on Loewenstein after 10 minutes when he failed to return to his seat. Thinking Loewenstein might be ill, he knocked on the door. No one answered. Baxter then kicked the door open and couldn't believe his eyes. Loewenstein was nowhere to be found. Quickly, he raised the alarm, but the pilot made a strange decision. You see, he decided to land the plane on a deserted beach just outside of the city of Dunkirk instead of boarding to a nearby runway. The beach was polluted with French military, so the pilot and Loewenstein's crew were apprehended immediately. They were still at shock as to what happened to their boss, but eventually they came to a conclusion that Alfred accidentally opened the exit door instead of the toilet door and that he fell to his death. But the mystery surrounding his disappearance was yet to come. A couple of weeks later, July 19, the local fisherman was just doing his job when he saw this. A suit floating near the French coast. But of course, what he didn't realize was that he was looking at lifeless body of Alfred Loewenstein. The police were called. They eventually retrieved the body, and Alfred's widow Madeleine arranged a private autopsy to determine the cause of death. The examination found no signs that could indicate foul play or suicide. However, a small amount of alcohol was detected in his blood, which was extremely weird, since Alfred never drank. You see, the strangest thing about the whole incident was that there was almost no effort at all to get to the bottom of what had actually happened on the night of the incident. An official inquiry concluded that Loewenstein's death was accidental. That conclusion was in great part based on the testimonies of Donald Drew, the pilot, and Robert Little, the mechanic. Upon interrogation, they took 30 minutes to come up with an explanation regarding Alfred's death. Both of them insisted that the exit door was easy to open and that it was entirely possible for Loewenstein to open it by accident. As we will see later, the truthfulness of this claim will come under intense scrutiny. So, it was all just a pure accident, right? Well, this claim seems highly unlikely, because as you would expect, the airplane exit door wasn't easy to open as the staff had claimed. In fact, numerous tests to check the door stability were conducted in the weeks following the incident. Some even involved men from the British Air Ministry throwing themselves at the entry door at an altitude of more than 1,000 feet. The door withstood the weight with relative ease. The conclusion was clear and simple. No one could have fallen out of the plane by an accident. Well, if it wasn't an accident, was it suicide? He was certainly under pressure from investors, and some have even speculated that his corrupt practices were about to be exposed, so he probably chose death over disgrace. But no direct evidence linking him to corruption was ever produced, and again, the facts just don't add up. Loewenstein wasn't depressed and he was making plans for the future just before the incident. Let's say he did commit suicide for some odd reason. Again, there is still the issue of the door. Loewenstein couldn't have opened it even if he was trying to kill himself. This leaves us with one conclusion: murder. Alfred Loewenstein was forced off the plane. If that was indeed the case, then who did it? Given the wrong statements that they gave to Belgian authorities, the two obvious suspects were Donald Drew and Robert Little. It's still strange why both Belgian and French authorities rapidly closed the case. Some believe that both men were hired to kill Loewenstein and that the authorities were bribed. But the thing is, Drew stood by the doorway of the plane as the passengers boarded. He was later joined in the cockpit by Little. The cockpit was a sealed unit with no connecting door to the rest of the plane. Once the plane had taken off, Drew and Little had no access to the cabin. Drew, who died of stomach cancer a few years later, seemed to have lived a lavish life after the incident, which indicates that someone might have paid him a large sum of money for accomplishing the job. Now, remember when we talked about how the exit door couldn't be opened mid-flight? Well, there's a theory that the conspirators replaced the entry door with a rigged one that featured loose bolts. This would make opening it mid-flight and sending Alfred to his death a fairly simple task. As for the original door, it could have been placed in a small luggage compartment at the back. The two doors would then be switched upon landing. This would also explain the pilot's strange decision to land on the beach rather than the nearby runway. Clearly, they couldn't afford to have anyone witness the switch being made. You might be wondering, how did no one hear the door being open or shut? Wouldn't it make a huge noise? Well, you must take in consideration that it was 1928 and the planes back then were slower and much louder than they are now. Also take in account that they were flying over channel, so if anyone even heard anything, they must have thought it's just some sort of a bad turbulence. But still, the final question remains: who was behind the plot? Some likely suspects include Henry Dreyfus, a business rival and former associate of Alfred. Their feud escalated when Loewenstein discovered that Henry was behind an exposé that circulated in the Belgian press few months before the incident. As a consequence, Dreyfus was facing a libel suit. Did he turn to murder to avoid appearing in court for what could have been a destructive lawsuit? Albert Pam and Frederick Sarvacy. The two men were Alfred's partners in international holdings. On the surface, it doesn't seem like they could have benefited from Loewenstein's death, but a closer look at the paper trail reveals a different story. As a matter of fact, international holdings stock skyrocketed just weeks after the incident thanks to a mysterious $13 million profit that appeared out of nowhere. This sum eerily matched a number of anonymous insurance policies that were taken out on Loewenstein's life shortly before the incident. Madeleine. It was known that the tycoon's relationship with his wife was not good, and it was alleged that she was desperate to get her hands on his vast fortune before things got out of hand. But was the body that was found floating in the channel really the body of Alfred Loewenstein? Crime writers Robert and Carol Bridgestock have speculated that Loewenstein faked his own death and disappeared because of the financial irregularities in his businesses. This theory is supported by the facts that the body was buried in an unmarked grave and that his wife did not attend the funeral. At a distance of almost a century, your guess is as good as mine. However, there is one last interesting twist to the tale, should you be inclined to believe in these things. Mrs. M. Taylor, a respected medium at the time, claimed to have been contacted by the spirit of Alfred Loewenstein, whom she alleged made the following statement: "No idea of suicide entered my head till I went to inspect the plane before takeoff. Later I suddenly felt an irresistible impulse to open the door and end my existence. I fought it, but each time it grew stronger. A fierce longing took possession of me which I could not deny. What I went through you will never understand. I longed for death more passionately than a condemned man longs for life. Why? I could not explain. Shall I ever forget awful plunge into space? Yes. I realized for a moment my mistake, but too late." And the mystery remains unsolved to this day. With that being said, we came to an end. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a like since it only takes you a second and means a lot to us. Also consider subscribing if you wanna stay tuned for more similar upcoming content. Cheers!